Right. A nice radio delay there. Welcome to the Side Action, episode 23 of season 4. My name is Jim Weglars, aka Wegs. You can call me, you can call me anytime you want. You can follow me at Wegspool on Twitter and on Instagram.
And this is Steve Roberts, aka Action. You can follow me on Twitter at 31S Roberts.
Follow us at Side Action Pod on Twitter. So there you go. Action screwed up right there. It's only it's only our 122nd episode. So first of all, for our Side Action listeners, I got to congratulate Action here. He got engaged over the weekend on Saturday to Melissa, one of our biggest fans, actually. So congratulations, Action. Big applause and nice work.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited. A winter walk along the beach. It was the bay was frozen, but it was very romantic and a solid proposal all in all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hopefully it didn't fall over on the ice or anything, but it'd be memorable. I mean, Melissa's the not only a Side Action listener, she's one of the, just sweet girl. I mean, obviously a former free swinger. So I think she also played a little football too, right?
Yeah.
Soccer, so she's kind of in the family. So it's, welcome to the family officially, Melissa. So there you go.
Thank you.
How was the rest of your weekend? Obviously we'll talk about the football, but you guys went up there on Friday or Saturday? When did you go up there?
Yeah, up north, as we call it here in Michigan. I know they use the same nomenclature around your parts, but we went up to the Traverse City, Petoskey area. There's lots of wineries and outdoor activities, buoying, skiing, obviously, although we didn't ski. Just kind of palled around, did some drinking and eating, and hung around in the downtown. Stayed at a very nice hotel overlooking the bay. It was enjoyable. And then Saturday night when we were out to dinner, I was sweating the golf tournament. As you know, we touched on last week, it started a day early because they wanted to avoid the conference championship Sunday. And we sat down to dinner, and I had a big ticket on Luke List at 90-1 to win the tournament, and he was going into a playoff. So, of course, I had this really romantic dinner set up. We sat down, and I look up, and the TV right by the bar has the golf tournament on. So I was distracted a little bit, and Luke List won 90-1 in my bankroll. It was a nice hit early on in the golf season. 2 out of 4 winners now.
That's awesome. You're red hot, man. That's a great payday. I mean, Melissa knows what she's getting into with Action. The guy's name's Action. So what can you do?
Yeah, that's right.
You've obviously won your fair share of some bankrolls. So, she got to take the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah, I paid for dinner, and I paid for the whole weekend, really. So that was nice.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, on this end, I did. So let's see. I played a little volleyball on Saturday. Saturday evening, I spent some time with Ridgeway. Ridgeway and Cardish in the game. We went to this Smiley's Brewery. They've got a new location in the city at 3800 North Broadway, roughly. So we got a couple beers. I don't drink beer anymore. Action. Dehydrated me pretty quick, but it was tasty. We had a good time. Kind of called it early, and then Sunday, was just kind of plugging into the games. I went to Four Shadows, obviously the official bar of the Side Action, which, I'm sure Rob's not listening, but I'm going to hit you up for that display board. Maybe we can get some Side Action swag up there and promote us up there. But, was there with some of the volleyball guys, Luke, who's a listener, and Dave, who's moving out to Arizona. I just mentioned maybe he'll make it out to the Vegas trip, and my buddy Carlos, and then later Cardish kind of swapped in after the second game. So they were all there for the first game. We watched it, and then 2 checked out. Carter showed up, and then Dave left at halftime of the second game. But obviously great games. I won one of the sides, I guess, but a little disappointed because my ticket didn't come in for San Francisco. So that's a little spoiler, everybody. Sorry. So let's go into the NFL recap. Obviously, it was Championship Sunday. We only had 2 games. Super good games, though. I mean, not maybe as wild and crazy as the divisional round, but both. Look at this Action underdogs. It's the year of the underdog. 2 more dogs, one against the spread. Both of them road dogs as well. In this case, we didn't have 2 straight up winners, but we had 2 unders as well in championship week. So, but we finally got a game that was affected by the spread in the playoffs. It only took 10 games in or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. And you're right about that. The underdogs have definitely been barking in this playoff so far. And now Cincinnati looks to do it a third week in a row and go on the road and win a game.
That's right. That's right.
Even though technically the Super Bowl is supposed to be a neutral venue, it's in LA. So
Yeah, technically Cincinnati's the home team, I believe, technically, and they get to wear the dark jerseys or whatever. So let's talk about that first game. So Cincinnati, we were both on the Chiefs here, and honestly, Action, I think we were on the right side to start. I mean, Chiefs came out like gangbusters. They scored 21 points in their first three drives. They're up 21-3. It's 21-10 late in the half. They have a chance to score a touchdown or kick a field goal, Andy Reid, and instead they run out of time. And who would have known at that moment? Because at that moment, I believe Cincinnati was plus like 700 or plus 750 to win on the money line. But who would have known that the Chiefs would only score three more points in this game? I mean, they were scoring at will in the first half, and obviously the second half was just, I don't even know, I can't even explain it. I honestly, when I was watching the game, I was joking around that Mahomes had money on the game. I mean, he played so badly. I heard that he had a 1.6 quarterback rating in the second half after a 98 quarterback rating in the first half. But despite all that, they still had a chance to win the game outright. They wouldn't have covered for us. But, I mean, Mahomes fucked it up again. Sorry, America. Sorry to use the foul language. But dancing around, Sam Hubbard, knocks it out of his hand. He almost lost the game right there.
yeah.
And eventually they forced OT, and then our guy McPherson, the kicker from the Bengals, who's money. I thought he was going to miss that one that was kind of at an angle, but he made it. And the Bengals, they hadn't been in the Super Bowl since the 88-89 season with Boomer Esiason at quarterback. So just an insane game.
Yeah, it was the second half, really. It was the just crazy turnaround from the first half. It was like two separate games of themselves. You had to think there late with the Chiefs driving that they were going to get into the end zone and put the game away. But Mahomes kind of reverted back to his old self where he just kept dropping back deep in the pocket on like every big play. And ultimately it caught up with him.
And I don't understand Andy Reid. I mean, you're at there are a couple situations on that final drive. So you have this game where, the Chiefs dominated, then Cincinnati just kept grinding and got back, got the lead. But the Chiefs moved it with ease again, down the field again. And I don't know maybe they were playing prevent defense, but you wouldn't think they would with 3 points. Mm-hmm. But Kelsey was open on that last drive. They get inside the 5, but a couple times Mahomes run out of bounds. I mean, it's like this team has no timeouts. Like get it down to no time. And they got the ball at a 5. They run the first time, but the second time they don't run. And Mahomes gets sacked back-to-back times, and they were kind of lucky to force overtime, to be honest with you. So
yeah, true.
And I think the Bengals they should have won the game. Like when you watch the game in its entirety. But big disappointment for Kansas City. And it's one of those things that, the arrogance of both Mahomes and Reid, of course, is going to be called into question from now until the next Super Bowl, until they get there. It's one of these things, you don't have this many chances to win a Super Bowl. And it's not that they would have beaten, their opponent next week or in a week or so, but you can't blow these golden apples. Four times they've gone to the AFC Championship game, and they've only gone to 2 Super Bowls and only won 1.
All 4 of them were at home too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, the second game you had the Rams playing the Niners. This was, kind of I wouldn't say it was unexciting. It was an exciting game, but it was definitely kind of what we expected, a lower scoring game, 2 divisional foes that were kind of, just hitting each other across the mouth a couple of times. I did think in the first half, the Rams looked like the better team. They were moving the ball fairly easily, but they kept getting bogged down in the red zone. And obviously, Stafford threw a pick early in the game in the end zone. But San Francisco, I mean, Jimmy G did what he did. They made a couple big plays. Your guy Debo made a huge play to get a touchdown, and they were up 10-7.5. They got to 17-7, right, with a good big touchdown to Kittle. And then I don't know what happens to Shanahan and his play calling. I don't know if he just puckers up or something. He just can't do it. They have their chance, 17-14, to kind of put the nail in the coffin, and they don't go for it on 4th and 2. Not to mention, I hated the 2nd and 3rd down calls. The Rams were stuffing the run all day, and it comes back to bite them because Stafford moves them in a position and eventually gets 2 more field goals to win this game. And obviously, we already know the answer to this question. It looks like Jimmy G's last game in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think you're right. Shanahan kind of really was just stubborn there and focused on the run, where it was pretty clear that Jimmy G was having some success with those quick early down passes. And it looked like the Niners were going to line up and go for it there too. They lined up and then ran the play clock down, tried to draw them off sides. But I thought even leading up to that they were going to go for that fourth down, and was kind of surprised they chose to punt it.
Well, when they ran Juszczyk on a 3rd and
Yeah.
2.5 up the middle, I thought for sure they're going for it. What, that was the play call to get first down? I mean, I love Juszczyk as a player, but he's not going to grind. He's not going to go up the middle and take on Aaron Donald for 2.5 yards. I thought the run game in general, it was very stubborn. They're running right up the middle. They didn't try to run at the edges. They didn't try to run at Von Miller, who's lighter, or Leonard Floyd. It was a really weird game plan. And in some ways, when you look at the box score, the Rams did dominate. I mean, they had 11 for 18 on the third down conversions. They way more yards than San Francisco. It was just that San Francisco made some big plays to make things happen, to get touchdowns. But hey, you know what? It's a very talented team. I guess it's the Trey Lance era. I can't believe we're saying that. Maybe he'll the 49ers, but you got to think, the Rams, this is a really good shot. They went in all in to win the Super Bowl, and now they're lining up for it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder if Trey Lance is all of a sudden going to step in and be good for this team. I certainly expect that it's going to be a drop off compared to the way Jimmy played this year.
For sure. Well, let's just talk briefly about the Super Bowl action, just high level stuff, and we'll get into a lot of things next week, especially props, which is, we'll talk more about it next week, what happens at the Super Bowl. When I look at these two teams, going into before I looked at metrics, and I knew the metrics kind of in the back of my head, but these teams actually aren't that different in terms of numbers. But the way the Rams have been playing in the playoffs, they seem that they would dominate this Bengals team. But when you look at it closely, especially for the regular season index, they're not that close. They're not that far apart. I mean, these teams are really close in scoring, both offense and defense. I mean, the Rams do gain more yardage, and they're a little bit higher in turnover differential, but the differential between these two teams is pretty minimal.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you've seen the number tick up since open in the week at 4, and now it's going up to 4.5. So despite the metrics showing that they're a pretty even team, it's pretty clear, at least early on, that the bigger bettors are siding with the Rams.
They are. And I mean, that was my initial take too. It was like, okay, it's the Rams Super Bowl. As soon as the Bengals won, I'm like, it's the Rams, even though I was rooting for San Francisco. But we'll see. They got to play it on the field. A couple of the injuries that are of note. I mean, the Bengals, CJ Uzomah looks like he's not going to play. He got hurt pretty bad in that game. He's still listed as questionable. They also have, defensive line injuries, which hasn't stopped this defense, by the way.
Yeah.
You've got Cameron Sample, his groin, he's questionable, and then Josh Tupou, who was also questionable last time. So, they seem to be playing through injuries. And then on the Rams side, Taylor Rapp is still out with a concussion at safety, and they haven't necessarily missed him per se. But I thought that the Higbee injury at tight end could cost them, although the other guy stepped in pretty well. And then we mentioned this last time, Joe Noteboom, with his pec is questionable, but it seemed like their offensive line held up pretty good against the Niners. I did hear a lot of talk on the Lombardi line this week that, and I didn't really notice it at the time, they only called one holding penalty in the entire game.
Wow.
So it does depend on how they are going to call this, because if they let the Bengals guys hold against that defensive line, and likewise, then maybe it's a different football game.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially with how good the Rams defensive line is. And how porous the Bengals offensive line is. I think that's certainly probably the biggest mismatch in terms of the units in this game. And I'm sure you're going to hear that a lot as you listen to media over the next week and a half. And if the referees aren't calling holding penalties, it could be a long day for the Rams D-line.
Yeah, it was funny because going into the game, I think that crew, it wasn't what they do, at least, I think that in the Super Bowl they do this too, but in the championship, so you had a lead official, and that guy is known for his crews calling a ton of penalties. But it's kind of like an all-star crew across the board. And I think in both games, they kind of let him play. I mean, you saw early in the game, they were mugging Jamar Chase in the KC Cincinnati game. And I think that's what they did to Tyreek Hill in the second half. They just started grabbing him and slowing him down. So I mean, look, if you can get away with it, it's great. They're not calling it, but it definitely favors, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit,
Mhm.
especially skill positions, guys.
Definitely.
Now, you mentioned, obviously, the game is not this week. It's a week from Sunday, it's 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. You mentioned the Rams opened. It's 4-point favorites. Now they're 4.5. What about this total? It's 48 and a half. I think it's gone down, or has it gone up from
Yeah.
you?
No, opener was like 50 and a half or 50, and you've seen a little move down here early on this week in week one.
Right, which is, I guess, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, in Super Bowls, usually the public's gonna bet the over. They want points, so maybe that's just the sharp money coming in early and swooping in and getting a better number. Maybe that's your take, but I do think it probably, if the Bengals are to have a chance, they do have to keep this number low, I think, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think I've heard some state that both of these coaches have shown a propensity to get really conservative too in these games that matter. Zach Taylor obviously just has this one postseason under his belt, but McVay, I think, has a history of not trying to get too wild and loose with the passing game in these games. And so I expect a lot of running game on both sides with Akers and Mixon. And I put a couple props down here, and that goes straight to that point. And running the football a lot is going to lead to a running clock and a lower score.
Right. What Action's talking about, he's got Akers at over 62 and a half yards rushing. It's minus 115 at MGM. Mixon over 16 and a half carries, minus 125 at Caesars. Now, with that, you did know that Zach Taylor, maybe it's an experience or whatever, all he was doing was running on first down in the second half. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
like second and 10 every time, even against the Chiefs. We'll see if he kind of learns from his mistake. But you also have the OBJ prop, over 63 and a half at minus 114 at FanDuel. You're thinking that maybe the Bengals will try to stop Cooper Kupp? I
Yeah,
mean,
I hope so.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's one part of it too. And the Higbee injury, I think, also lends itself to more OBJ targets in this game. I'm not really sure if Higbee's going to play, and if he doesn't, you certainly would expect that Stafford's going to look to OBJ a little bit too. So that's part of my angle.
Right. Now it's tough action. We can do our official picks next week, but I will tell you in this, not that the index has been great. The playoff index is usually much better than it is in other years. This year was one of these coin flip years, but it loves the Bengals in the points because of, like I said, how close they're in the index. The eye test doesn't tell me that, but again, this team has been defying logic for weeks. I mean, obviously the
Mm-hmm.
Titans win. Maybe the Titans weren't as good an opponent, but 9 sacks last week. You're down 21-3, and they come back, which mirrored a lot of their regular season game in Week 17. I mean, the Rams seem like the better team, but man, I'll have to really dig into this next week to figure out which way to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about it in every Super Bowl that we've podcasted for, and you'll probably hear it again a couple times this week. But typically, you're going to see that the public will gravitate to the underdog on the money line.
Yep.
And I expect that the same will happen over the next week or so with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they're really going to start to enter public dog territory. And if you do like the Rams, then you're probably going to get a little bit of a depressed number on the money line, which is likely where I'm going to be looking.
Yeah, and that's what they've talked about on VSiN all week. Just kind of wait and wait and wait. Let that public betting really drive that money line down. That doesn't really match the spread because the spread may not move, but the money line is moving because so many novice bettors are just seeing that plus price and they're just trying to win money, even though you win money on the negative price too, everybody. So anyway, that's all I had this week. Actually, I don't know if you want to do anything else, but we'll dig into a ton of props next week, maybe a little bit more both on how to bet this game and how to watch it and all that kind of stuff. I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to do it yet. I know that I'm still invited to the one party I always go to, but we were talking about going back to the Four Shadows. We'll see. I mean, I like a big atmosphere and people are having a good time with squares and whatever.
Yeah, and certainly look into the entertainment props too. I know that a lot of our fans like to hear about the national anthem and the halftime show related props.
Oh yeah, of course. We got to get those in. I mean, the time of the national anthem is essential.
And the coin toss. I don't know if you got any sharp picks on the coin toss.
I say always go heads, but now I did go tails, right? This week for the because I think Josh Allen went tails and it was heads, and then the Chiefs won again this week, and they won both coin tosses, but this time it was heads this week. So, or no, tails this week. Yeah, right. All right, well, let's go into college basketball. Obviously, the action index is dynamic. I can see some movement there. Your Kentucky Wildcats are up a little bit. Arizona's number 2 now.
Yeah. Yeah, Arizona Baylor dropped a couple of spots, and I really think, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago they had some injuries and the COVID bug that went through, but I really think that their play has leveled off too, just watching them with my own eyes. And so they're down to 4, and the top 3 I think are pretty solid in Gonzaga, Arizona, and Kentucky. I don't know how you feel about those teams, Wegs.
Well, I haven't seen Arizona play very much this year. I want to play. I saw maybe about 5 minutes of the game against UCLA last week, which we mentioned. And Kentucky, I have seen play. They had a great win at Kansas. They're going to be big in your index because of the rebound stuff, but they're also number 2 in Ken Palm. I mean, they've shot up, like a bullet. I do like them, but I want to watch them a little bit more to understand their guard play. Baylor, because of the guards, when they get healthy, I think they're going to still be there. They'll be in the mix. And then I'm a little surprised that Auburn's so low, and I wonder if it's rebounding. This team's playing really well. They are the number 1 team in the country, but they're kind of blowing people. I mean, they're playing great basketball. Now they did win. They won in the Big 12 Challenge, right? They did win their game.
Yeah.
They beat
Oklahoma,
yeah.
Right?
So I don't know. I think that you're on the right track here. I got to see more basketball. I mean, the next month is going to tell a lot, obviously, before we get to the the March Madness. Well, last week we went 3-3 action on our picks. I had to listen back to the playback. So, the Auburn pick came in over Oklahoma, but Baylor did not. As you mentioned, they didn't play so good, and Alabama, who hasn't been playing great, stepped up in that game. Your Kentucky came through with Kansas, as we mentioned. Marquette is on a roll. They also beat Villanova last night, but they obviously didn't win the game against Providence, but they lost by 1, so they covered the number. And then a little bit of a surprise that Ohio State played really well at Purdue on Sunday. Did you get to watch that game, or you were?
We were driving back, and I was listening on the radio all the way, and Purdue was dominating them. They were up by like 15 or 20 points with 8 minutes to go, and this is a problem that the Boilermakers have had in several Big Ten games this year, where they just can't close teams out. Their opponents look to speed them up a little bit and put some pressure on them. And I think that the Boilermakers guards are going to be their downfall this season because they can't handle the pressure. And Hunter and Thompson and company just aren't elite guards. So
Guards win in college basketball, as you know. Oh yeah, I was gonna we'll go to the last one. Iowa State did not fare very well against Kansas. Kansas played very well on the road in that game. The other team that I know they're in your top 10. Texas Tech is number 9, and I know that you've got the futures pick. So good job, Action. But we're telling our listeners again, this team is playing really well. And I don't know if you got to see the game. I got to watch the game against Texas the other night. Obviously, Chris Beard was coming back, and it was a madhouse in there. But this team is really good. They've got some dudes on this team, and I always like dudes. I like guys who can, they're all like 6'6" and 220 and big dudes, and they can ball out. And the defense is always going to be there, but I think they have guys who can actually play, and make some plays on offense, which is always a struggle when you have those old Texas Tech teams. So I think, the new coach, he's brought in some guys.
Yeah, they're good defensively. Extremely good. I'm gonna have to see a little bit more out of their offense, but certainly think that they have a chance to make a run in March.
Yeah, I like them too. I mean, they're down to 11, but they're 54th in offense, so we'll see. Well, what about this week action? We've got some games. I picked a Friday night action for you, and I'm sorry my Rams failed you the other night, which they haven't been playing great. But that was on the road. They blew it in overtime on your sorry action. But Friday night action, that's tomorrow night. The Aztecs, which is usually the class of this group, but the Mountain West is pretty loaded this year. I think they're going to get 3 or 4 teams in the tournament. But San Diego State's going to Colorado State, 8:00 Central tomorrow night. Now the Aztecs got blown out by 30 in early January, but I think that was right off a COVID situation. They didn't have everybody back. The Rams have not been playing good defense at all, but they have a really good offense, and I like some of their players. You're showing Ken Palm projects Colorado State being a 2-point favorite at home, but do you like the Aztecs to take this one?
No, I think that Colorado State is the side here. I do show that San Diego State is slightly better on a neutral court, but
Mhm.
I think traveling to, is it Fort Collins?
Fort Collins, Moby Arena, baby.
Is going to be some home court advantage for them, and I would probably lean to the home side here in the Rams. I mean, both of them are equally good defense on the San Diego State side, and the Colorado State offense I think is going to be the matchup in this one. But
Mhm.
I think that the Rams are the pick at home.
And I don't know San Diego State's team well enough to say, but what I've seen in the last two games that they did lose to Utah State and to Wyoming, they're big teams. Colorado State's small. They're
Mhm.
small. Roddy's a really good power forward, but he's more like a Charles Barkley, like 6'6" and
Yeah.
245 or something. He's not, they don't have any tall guys on the team. So they struggle against bigger teams on the glass. And once Roddy gets in foul trouble, he's a main offensive weapon. They struggle, and that's what happened. He fouled out in overtime, and it was kind of over when they played at Wyoming. That's the border war, by the way. I mean, I know you're not familiar with that, so it was exciting. They lost no, so
It was an exciting game. It was probably the biggest game on. Was that Tuesday or I don't know. I
yeah,
forget what night it was, but that was a good
yeah,
one. Or Monday. It had to be Monday.
yeah. It was a good game. All right, so Saturday we've got some good games here. You've got UConn trying to pump up the Big East here. UConn, of course, lost. They lost last night, but UConn is going. They're the seventh. They're ranked 17th. Is going to Villanova. You've got the total of 129 here, and this game's at 11 a.m. Central. They're two good teams in the Big East. I don't know if they're the top teams anymore with Marquette surging and everything, but what do you think of this when you have UConn as a 7-point dog on the road at Villanova?
I do. Ken
Yep,
Palm projections here,
sure.
and a low total 129, which just speaks to the pace that both of these teams play. The Connecticut Huskies are ranked 259 in pace, and Villanova is almost dead last in D1 at 356.
Hmm.
So definitely going to be a grind, which is going to give a lot more value to the points, I think, on the underdog side. And to be honest with you, I'm showing a little bit of value on Connecticut. I'm hesitant though, because I think it's a really great bounce back spot for the Wildcats coming off the big loss to Marquette last night.
Yeah, I agree. They didn't play great in that game, and I think they're going to come home and play better. We'll see. At first when I saw this, I was really excited on lining up because I thought these teams were playing great, but both of them are struggling. I do trust Jay Wright a lot. So I think 7 seems like a big number, though. In college basketball, you want to just review for our listeners what our key numbers are in college basketball because we got to get off our football mindset.
Yeah. I mean, really, you're talking about in the range like 2, 3, 4, certainly key in one hand. And then anytime I see a game that's lying between 5, 6, 7, and 8, I immediately gravitate to the free throw shooting because in many cases such as this, you're going to see a pretty, a tight game likely. But if the favorite's ahead coming down the stretch, then they're obviously going to get put on the line quite a bit. And I'm looking here at Villanova's numbers, number one free throw shooting team in the country, 83%. So there's a little bit of interest there because typically if I see a team laying 7 and they're a really crappy free throw shooting team, then you would look to go against them in most cases.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe talk me into Villanova, even though you said there's value on UConn. I like the bounce back spot. If they're good free throw shooting, I'll take that. Lay this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the game we're going to talk about now. Now, little plug for this thing that we may try, or I guess we're going to try this thing called Rave On Sports. It's an app that we got contacted via Twitter to participate as hosts in a game. And what you do is you can basically live chat during a game. It's kind of like a smaller version of Twitter, but for an individual game, and you can kind of comment with people that are watching the game in real time with a host. And so we're going to try. We haven't officially done this. We're just throwing this out there to our mega listeners that we are going to Action. I'm going to live chat this game. I'm going to take Illinois. He's going to take Indiana. And we're going to talk smack the whole game as we watch this at 11 a.m. Central. So it looks like Illinois is a 1-point dog on the road against Indiana, which, I mean, I guess that's about right. I mean, Illinois is probably favored on a neutral, right?
Mm-hmm.
But walk us through the matchup here. I mean, I would probably favor, Illinois in general, given where Indiana's offense is, but do they have a lot of size on Indiana? Because I know that besides Kofi, they get a little thin in the middle in Illinois.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this season, Indiana's strength is certainly their interior. All-American Trace Jackson Davis is a candidate for the Wooden Award this season. And they also have Race Thompson, who plays at the 4, who is a great offensive rebounder. And I think between the two of them, they're going to be able to hold their own with Kofi on the inside. So I lean to Indiana in this game, but the pick that I'm going to be looking at most likely is going to be a first half under in this because Indiana plays stellar defense. When you match up against a team like Illinois, you want to look for a team that plays good interior defense, and Indiana is number 5 ranked in the country at defending 2-point field goals. And so I think that's going to go a long way. Trace and company are going to keep Kofi shooting poorly. And I think that combined with the pace of both Illinois and Indiana and the defense, that I'm looking at a first half under.
Okay, got it. And so the game total is 135. First half under, what was the total?
I would project that it's probably going to be in the 62 to 63 range with a total of 135. And I think I'm going to be looking for anything at 63 or better to play under in the first half.
Right. And for our new listeners, a lot of times when you see these totals, the first half total is a little lower than the second half total because the second half total kind of factors in the free throws like Action was talking about with good teams. So you'll see, the overall game total might be higher than it's not just a doubling up of the total. Where in the NFL, it's almost inverse, right? Sometimes you have, kind of split down the middle. It depends on the team. If they're running the ball, they're going to run the clock out. So it's kind of the opposite effect. When the clock stops, they keep scoring because of free throws.
Yeah, and in the NBA too, I've noticed over the years that typically you see a much higher scoring first half than you might in the second half, just because the players are so much better defensively. They don't really typically foul quite as much down the stretch.
Yeah, and they actually turn on and play defense in the second half, right? To the fourth quarter. Okay, well, let's go to the next game. It sounds like, I'm probably with you in Indiana, by the way. I think that makes sense if you're getting point or you're just laying 1 point at home. Seems like that's almost a given, but I'll root on Illinois in the chat.
Tough spot for Illinois too. I know you watched them last night against Wisconsin at home. They got the big victory to take a stranglehold on first place in the Big Ten. And then on Tuesday, they're traveling to West Lafayette in the big rematch against Purdue.
Okay, so it's a sandwich spot, as they call it, huh?
Indeed.
There we go. I learned something, Action. It's only been 4 seasons. All right, so the next game's a huge game in the Big 12. It's Baylor going to Kansas. This is at 3 p.m. Central on Saturday. Baylor's showing up as a 1-point dog on the road, which is kind of interesting. I know this is a KenPom number, total of 151. Baylor's struggling, but Kansas isn't lighting it up. They played good against Iowa State. I guess I would have to check the injury report. I know you had mentioned there's some injuries, and I know like Flagler's hurt, some other guys. They did struggle to score against West Virginia until this late in that game. So it's interesting to get Baylor as a short dog, though. It's hard for me to pass that up, even though we know that Allen Fieldhouse has a magical aura, but they haven't been. They got crushed by Kentucky, last week there.
Yeah, and enter another team in the Baylor Bears who are stellar on the offensive glass, number 5 in the country at offensive rebounding. So I think I'm with you. This is another really tough matchup for the Jayhawks, much like the Kentucky one was last Saturday. And I show that Baylor is actually 3 points better on a neutral court here. And if you're, one is probably pretty close, but I think that if you're looking for an underdog here, playing them in this game is a good spot.
Okay. Like it. All right, let's go to the Pac-12 now. USC at Arizona. Arizona's, we've talked about it. They should be in the national championship mix when it's all said and done. You're showing them as an 11-point favorite, though, at home against USC. Total of 149 per the KenPom numbers. This is 4 o'clock Central on Saturday. USC had a great year last year. They had the Mobley brothers. They've had a pretty good year. I think there's a lot of carryover from last year when you look at the polling, because the team isn't quite as good as it was last year. They're certainly a solid squad. They're a top 30-ish squad. I'm showing 27th in KenPom, but they're not nearly as good on either end as they were last year. Last year, they were kind of an elite defensive team with Mobley. They're not quite as good. Their offense is really better this year. I'm going to side to Arizona. 11 seems like a big number, though, Action. I mean, what do you think?
It does. It does on paper, but looking at my numbers here, I make Arizona 10 points better on a neutral. So give them any sort of home court advantage, then you can easily get to this number and probably shows a little bit of value on the Wildcat side. And, they have been awesome this year. Number 7 ranked defensively and number 13 on offense. So they have the interior game that can match up with the lesser Mobley brother. And I think that Arizona is certainly the side here. It's a tough spot, though, because they have a big game tonight against UCLA in the rematch where they lost previously this season.
Yeah, that one I would definitely lay some points to take it out on UCLA tonight. Yeah. But you're right. The back and forth in college is hard to, you see it, as we mentioned last week. You don't see teams covering, 5 out of 7, 6 out of 8 very often. So I guess we'll see how they play tonight then. But officially for the podcast pick, we will go on Arizona. The last one for Saturday I have, it's not necessarily a top in the rankings, but we've got Duke going to North Carolina. This is a blue blood matchup. It's Coach K's last time going to North Carolina, ever, theoretically, as a coach anyway. So Duke, you're showing as a 3-point favorite on the road per KenPom, and then the total is 149. What do you think? You think Duke's going to give a good send-off, in North Carolina, or you think it's more like, hey, we're going to stick it to you, Coach K, last time in Chapel Hill?
I don't know. This one is tough. I think the number is probably spot on. So you have to think that the Tar Heel fans and the team and the players alike are going to be up to beat Coach K one last time at home. Oh, yeah. That's probably where my gut leads me to in this game, but I don't really know if I have much of an edge one way or another. The number looks spot on.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely take the points with the home team, just because given the scenario. I mean, it's not a lot of new numbers associated. When you look at North Carolina, they're not very good on defense. They're 74th in KenPom, whereas Duke is a really good basketball team on both sides of the floor. They're the better team, but yeah. We've seen it before, these emotional spots. I mean, Florida State went off against Duke, and they're having a terrible year. So I think, I would definitely take the points at home with the Tar Heels.
I do. If the total comes out at or near 150, which KenPom is projecting, I would show a little bit of value to the under. I'm looking at a total here by my numbers around 144, and I think that given Duke's a little bit slower pace, they might be able to control the tempo a little bit, and their superior defense could suppress the scoring.
Okay, there you go. 2 more games here, Action. On Tuesday, I skipped a day. In a couple of days, I didn't see any great games that I liked. On Tuesday, you've got a Big Ten matchup. You got 2 Big Ten matchups. You've got Wisconsin going to Michigan State. Sparty's kind of gotten on track, even though they're winning close games. They're showing up as a 6-point favorite at home. This is at 6 o'clock Central on Tuesday. And then the total being 140 per KenPom. The Badgers started off kind of gangbusters in the Big Ten and in general. I think they're kind of coming back to earth, both numerically and in the standings. So do you think this is another spot where the Sparty is kind of getting galvanized and rising up? I mean, numerically, this team is better. So 6 points, kind of a lot. How are they shooting the ball from the line?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State 60th, ranked 75% from the free throw line, which is far off from Wisconsin, who's 76%. So I do think that you have a tick mark there in the free throw department. Again, this is another number that KenPom has projected pretty much right in line with my numbers. So no real edge per se, especially on the glass on both sides. I think that the matchup is pretty spot on, but I'm looking to fade Wisconsin at all costs. Right. I finally got a W against them last night in Champaign. And I think that this is another spot to go against them on the road at Michigan State has been their bugaboo. And also the Big Ten home teams this year have been dominating against the spread.
Right. Good notes. Here's a nugget. Let's do it. Michigan -6 or Michigan State -6. All right. Last game, we already mentioned it. we're all over Illinois this week, but Illinois is going to Purdue. This was a great matchup in the first game at Illinois when, I think it was double overtime or maybe triple overtime. And obviously, Illinois is now on the road this time, West Lafayette. You're saying Purdue -7. This is one of these situations where, obviously we're going to do the chat on Saturday and see what happens, but I don't like Illinois in this spot at all. The total 149, by the way, 8 o'clock 8 o'clock Central on Tuesday. I don't like it because I think, first of all, we talked about the size. I think that's what bedevils Illinois this year. But more importantly, Purdue, whatever, man. I think that they're going to come up and they're gonna take this team down. I think they'll be ready for them this time. I think Illinois was kind of surprised them at least in the first half of that game, and I think Purdue. Now, granted, it's a long week in the Big Ten. I mean, Illinois got Wisconsin and Indiana, and they're now again for Purdue. But I do like Purdue in this spot. -7 might be a lot, but I think they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back to the first meeting, MLK Day, I remember because I was sitting right here and watching it. The Illinois closed as a 1-point favorite at home. And so now flipping venues and looking at KenPom listing the Boilermakers as a 7-point favorite is quite a big move. And I'm not sure that Mackey Arena really lines up to provide that sort of home court advantage, although it's certainly near the top of the Big Ten. But having said that, I think that this game is more about the matchups. And early on in that game in Champaign, it was pretty clear that Kofi was not going to be able to guard Edey without fouling him. And I think that's going to happen again. And you're going to see Kofi get into foul trouble and get sent to the bench pretty early. And from there, it's just going to be supreme advantage to the Boilermakers. So I like that side too. I like even better the under in this game. In game one, I found myself on the under, and it was dead nuts winner until Jaden Ivey missed the free throw and Curbelo came down and scored, and it went to double overtime. So KenPom projecting 149, and I'm showing the total closer to 143. I'm definitely going to be on the under in this game.
Okay, there you go. All right, well, that's the college basketball segment. It looks like we've got some more information this week for everybody. The one of our both listeners, and he's a participant in the Vegas trip, the Night Range of Paul Dempsey. He gave us this trend. As you know, this weekend is the All-Star break in the NHL, and what he's noted over the last few years is that there's a definite trend going on that we should be betting on. Is that teams that basically aren't playing the early games and have a longer period of rest between their next game, sometimes upwards of 10, 11, 12 days. That's the time when you want to bet against that team that's been sitting for a long time. And he's noted several games here. He's got, on February 8th, he's got New Jersey at Montreal. He's got Edmonton at Chicago. And again, the first team would be the team you want to bet for. And I guess you would bet what? You would just bet straight up and then money line? Is that what you're doing in this game?
Yeah. I think typically in hockey, just like baseball, you're going to see the lines just like money lines. So you're going to be laying somewhere between 150 and -200 on a favorite. Or conversely, you might find a +140, 180 range on the underdog. You certainly can play the puck line, they call it in hockey, which is laying 1.5 or taking 1.5 with the underdog, just like baseball. But I think Night Ranger is probably looking at the money line in a lot of these historical trends.
Okay. So just to review, you've got on the 8th, you've got Jersey at Montreal. On the 9th, you've got Edmonton at the Blackhawks here in Chicago. You also have Vegas at Calgary. You have Arizona at Seattle. You have Vancouver against the New York Islanders. That's all on the 9th. And then when you're on the 10th, you've got Columbus at Buffalo, New Jersey at St. Louis, and that's an 11-day layoff for the Blues in that one. On the 11th, you've got Seattle at Anaheim. That's a 10-day layoff for the Ducks. So take those guys down. On the 15th, you have Boston at the New York Rangers. That's a 13-day layoff. And then the last one he listed on the 16th is Carolina versus Florida. The Panthers have a 14-day layoff. So For me personally, I'm a little conservative on these things. I'd probably go with those last four that have those mega layoffs.
Uh-huh.
But I love his quote here. Is it a trend or just an anomaly? That's the question bettors have to ask themselves.
I like it. I mean, you can't argue with the numbers over the last 2 seasons, 19-7 straight up. And by my quick math, that's close to like 80%. So depending on what the prices on some of those games are, it will be nice. I don't know the teams well enough to know if some of them might be underdogs, but if you could get a nice plus price in some of those games, that would be quite juicy.
I'd imagine the at the Blues, at Anaheim, at
Mhm.
the Rangers, those probably are plus money for those teams. That would be New Jersey and Seattle, and then I guess Boston. So we'll check it out, Night Ranger. Let's win some money this week, and then we'll report back and see what happens. I guess it goes into the next week, right? What day is it today? So it goes into the 10th. It's almost 2 weeks now. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely check this trend and see if we can win some cash.
Yeah, one team I know for sure is going to be an underdog, and that's Arizona playing
Hmm.
at Seattle. Arizona is really bad this year, but could be a nice big number.
I know. Exactly. Why not? Take advantage of it. All right. Well, let's go into, do you have a golf angle this week?
So golf started today. So we missed. I had half a mind to put out my picks on Twitter yesterday,
Sure.
but they're playing in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am this week, and there's good reason. A lot of the main world golf top 50 are playing in Saudi Arabia. So it's a pretty weak field this year at Pebble Beach. Patrick Cantlay is near the top of the field, and Seamus Power. And I went with a ton of long shots, Wegs. I think my card has like 5 golfers on it, and all of them are between 120 to 1 and 300 to 1 in one case. So I'll report back if we hit a big ticket. But otherwise, I think we could probably dive more into golf next week.
Okay. Well, 90 to 1 hit last week, man. I mean, you're cashing tickets, paying for weekends. You got to pay out that engagement ring, buddy.
Yeah, if Kevin Tway comes in this week, then I'll certainly be hollering from the mountaintops in Colorado.
Kevin Tway. Kevin Tway. All right. All right. Well, that wraps up the content. Let's just review a little bit. A couple things. First of all, I just want another plug. We'll have to do it now. Action. Hopefully, they get us on there. We're talking about doing this hosting for Rave On. The app Rave On, which is basically a chat app. We're going to try to do that Illinois Indiana game this weekend on Saturday at 11 a.m. Central. So jump on the chat and download the app, and hopefully you can join us and just talk smack during that game. It'll be fun. But also a plug for the Vegas trip. Action. We're closing in. I mean, it's February 3rd. What is that? 6 weeks away or so.
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks from today, we'll be at Circa Swim. Hopefully, Stadium Swim. It'll be a beautiful day, and for us to watch the opening day of the tournament. We have 7 committed. We may have more. Hopefully, my buddy Dave on the volleyball will drive on up from Scottsdale to join us, and maybe a few extras, so there'll be plenty of room for anybody who wants to come. We already gotten our accommodations. A couple other guys have. So if you're interested, let us know. Should be a great time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. The weather is always beautiful in Vegas in March. And so if you're tired of this Midwestern snow, then you should come and join us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, follow us at Side Action Pod on Twitter. Follow me at Wegspool on Twitter and Instagram.
And follow me on Twitter at 31S Roberts.
All right. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.